In this episode of The Hood, the Holy Podcast, we move from mindset into action. Because thinking different isn't enough if you're still living off your feelings. This conversation breaks down why emotions can't be trusted to lead your life, how inconsistency keeps you stuck, and what it really takes to build discipline when everything in you wants to quit. If you're tired of starting and stopping, this is the shift that changes everything.
If you only move when you feel like it, you'll never become who you're called to be. See, in episode 2, we talked about mindset, but our mindset changed, but behavior still controlled by feelings will destroy you. See, feelings are unstable. Feelings change daily, sometimes even hourly. They will consistently shift on you depending on what's going on in your current environment, situation, and sphere of influence. One thing that I want you to know is that you can feel tired, discouraged, frustrated, and still move forward and be productive. I'm still able to get up every day and be as productive as if I woke up with all the motivation in the world. The issue is not the feeling, it's letting the feeling make decisions for you instead of you making the decisions that you need to make in order to transition into a better situation in life. A lot of times we focus on our circumstance and situation and what's happening to us that we don't ever stop to consider, hey, I know I'm getting a little frustrated. I know I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. What can I do in this situation that can change the outcome? Have you ever told yourself, man, I can't do this? It's usually, I feel like I can't do this. And the thing that you have to hear is, I feel like I can't do this is not I can't do it as if I don't have the means, the capability, the resources at my disposal to be able to do this thing. What's happening is that I'm just in a survival mode or a victim mindset, and I'm saying I feel like I can't do this. And so then I shut down and I want to retreat. Frustration leads people to quit early. We all heard this little parable. Have you ever noticed somebody that's running a race in the dark, so you can't technically see the finish line? And as you're running, you get tired because you've just been running for so long. You're like, man, I just can't do this no more. And you keep saying it over and over again. And then you quit. Well, then the sun comes up and the lights turn on. And you realize you was only about 10 feet away from that finish line. Sometimes we don't understand how close we are to that breakthrough, how close we are to that moment that changes everything. But instead, we get frustrated, we get in our feelings, and we allow for our feelings to dictate for us. Me and my wife and my son was in Haven for Hope, which is a homeless shelter here in San Antonio. And at this homeless shelter, what I was going through was I was feeling like, man, I can't do this. I can't continue the way that I'm going. What I said was, it doesn't matter, man. Failure ain't an option. I got to make it through. I got to get through this. I got to make it happen. No matter what the people told me, no matter how many times they try to send me away. And believe it or not, man, Haven for Hope did try to send me away several times, me, my wife, and my son. And in the system of being homeless, what you don't realize is that people would treat you a certain way and expect for you not to react or respond to the way that they are treating you. It's sort of like a degrading moment in your life that you have to experience. And I went through that personally. And in me going through that, there were a lot of people there that treated us less than. And no matter what I did to try to prove that all we wanted was help, they kept putting us down. And so, yes, I felt like everything was against me. When I was a kid, I grew up in shelters and I was on the streets and my mom was addicted. And the thing is that when you grow up in that type of chaos, you then learn how to adapt to a chaotic environment and you become a master at survival mode, meaning technically I become a chameleon in any situation that I'm in because I have to learn how to survive when I was a kid. So now here I am, a grown man, living in a shelter again, but now I got my wife and my kid with me. And so I still have to learn how to survive. But in this aspect, yes, I felt like everything was against me. I could have gave up. I could have just shut it down and just went back to the things that I knew. You got to understand at that time, I was coming out of a lifestyle addiction. Okay. And coming from a lifestyle addiction, what I mean is that when I was out there, I was in gangs and I was selling drugs and I was making money and I was moving. I wasn't subjected to being degraded as if I was less than. And I was coming out of this lifestyle shift, trying to become a better man because I just wanted to be a father and a husband. And so in Isaiah 17:9, it clearly states the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? This is in the scripture. And when they're talking about the heart, they're talking about the feeling that we're having, our flesh. The heart symbolizing the human will and moral core as profoundly deceptive and corrupt beyond full human understanding. When we're talking about the heart, we're talking about the feelings, man. Like you can't trust your feelings. Here in Proverbs 3:5, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Feelings are real, but they are not always true. Feelings are signals, not leaders. Feelings are not meant to control your life. Feelings are indicators that something is, and when I mean off, I don't always mean off in a bad way, but feelings is just saying, hey, you know what, man, there's something inside of me that is causing me to feel this way, good or bad. Let me examine it. Let me look at it deeper. Let me figure out why I'm having this intense emotion. See, the thing is that I found a way to get over those things that were becoming barriers to my growth. They were no longer the anchor that kept me stuck. Instead, I used that as a pillar or a stepping stone to learn how to never be a victim again, to learn how to improve my life to where I'm not dependent, but I am independent, and then I can turn around and be interdependent. I learned how to use my trauma to become independent so then I can be interdependent with anybody who comes around me who is also independent. If you don't process your past, if you don't process the things that have happened to you, they will control your decisions. Why? Because those feelings or these emotions will rise up in your life that will then cause you to react a certain way that then keeps you stuck in this cycle, this constant loop. And if you want to get out of this victim mindset, if you want to get out of this survival mode, you have to learn how to understand what you are feeling. It's not a matter about what the world understands or what they don't understand. Because what I've learned in my life, even to today, is that no matter how I feel, people are feeling things themselves, and everybody is more aware and concerned with what they're feeling and what they're going through. And that's okay. Why? Because they're still living life. They're processing things too. The question is can we process together and can we continue to build and move forward? Do we have to stay hashing out the same thing over and over? Learn to pause, reflect, and respond instead of react. If I'm feeling frustrated right now and I'm feeling like I'm in a place where I feel like shutting down, well, what I need to do is whatever I'm doing that is causing this feeling to arise, I just take a pause real quick, take a deep breath, I recenter myself, and then I get back into focus. So everything that you go through is a learning situation. And when you learn how to pause, reflect, and respond instead of react, you are now learning to step back instead of reacting in heated moments. I can't just react to every moment in every situation that comes up because I feel like somebody is doing me the wrong way, whether they are or they're not. Sometimes our feelings are correct. We have to learn how to respond and not react. Choosing response over reaction in relationships and leadership really demonstrates and shows a true leader. A lot of individuals would just react to situation. They'll hear some information and they'll react. Something will happen and then they'll just react. There is no such thing as a response. So like, for instance, I'm driving down the highway and As I'm driving down this highway, my tire busts. This is a true story. And I'm going about 70 miles down the highway and the tire busts, and I was able to respond accordingly. So instead of hitting the brakes, I let off of the gas, I turned on my blinker, and I got over as soon as I can and got onto the medium, onto the side of the road. And as I was there, I get out, I look at the tire, and I said, okay, cool. Well, man, who can I call? What can I do? Oh man, my phone is dead. Okay, cool. Well, what can I walk to be able to make a phone call to be able to get this situated? And never, not one time did I react to the situation that happened. But instead, man, I'm just responding to the situation and I'm doing it cool, calm, and collective. And I'm able to solve the problem. The problem is that my tire busts on the highway. The solution to it is like I need a new tire. What I cannot do is sit there in my emotions and complain about my tire being busted on the side of the highway. Benefit does that do for me if I sit there and I'm just reacting to the situation out of emotion and I'm not responding? James 1 and 19. My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. And then 2 Timothy 1 and 7. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and self-control. I love this verse simply because it says that God gave us a spirit of self-control, meaning we can control ourselves. We can control how we respond to situations. We're going to talk about the difference between motivation and discipline. I need you to understand that motivation is temporary. It comes and it goes. It's fleeting. It never stays. It's just like your emotions, because motivation is a heightened sense of positive emotion. Discipline is built through structure and consistency. That if I establish some type of structure in my life and I'm building this system, so whenever you go to a job, whatever job it is, wherever you go, whatever it is that you are doing, if you don't have structure and consistency that goes along with that, where's your results coming from? Nobody's going to show up to something that you're not confident about. But if you're doing it consistently, whether people are showing up or not, but yet you're doing it, you're gaining practice. 2, you're showing consistency, you're building structure. And then 3, whether somebody shows up or not, man, you can record it and then you can learn how to improve your teaching and your ability to be able to produce the thing that you're trying to produce. Motivation starts with you. Discipline sustains you. So discipline is something that keeps me going to the end. It keeps me steady in the season where I want to give up. It keeps me steady in a place of uncertainty. And what I mean by that was when I was in prison and I was going through college, I had to learn how to read and write. So I had to go through these prerequisites. And in this, I wasn't making some very good grades because I really couldn't read and write that well, right? I was like at a 6th grade or a 4th grade level reading and like a 2nd grade level writing. And as I'm going through this and I'm having this difficulty of learning again how to read and write as a grown man, I was 22 years old. So as a grown man, I'm having this difficulty, but yet what I did is every morning I woke up, I had the dictionary next to me, I had the thesaurus next to me, man, and I had my papers that I was writing. Okay. And what I did is I would write the paper. And when I came across a word that I wanted to say, I know the word, I would go into the dictionary to look for the word. Then I'll go into the thesaurus and look for connotative meanings that will be associate words that would then help me express myself better in this sentence. And so now I'm having to understand sentence structure. Okay. Now this is something that is frustrating. It is difficult for a person to go through. Yet I had structure and I did it consistently to where now I can spell and I can read at a college level. Okay. But I would have never gotten to that place if I wasn't consistent in my studies and in my practices, that I was building this level of discipline within myself. Don't give up. Don't give in. Be disciplined, have structure, have consistency. And if you stay consistent and you keep with your structure, you will reap the benefits in the long run. But if we're only looking for the rewards in the short term, then of course, right, we're going to get frustrated and we're 9 times out of 10 probably going to give up. And if you end up giving up, then all you're saying is that everything that you was working for did not matter in the first place. So here we go again, right? 1 Corinthians 9:27. No, I strike a blow to my body and make it my slave, so that after I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified for the prize. What he's saying is that, man, he's making his body a slave, meaning that he is subjecting his human nature, his feelings, his desires to God. He is killing them. He is making them bow to his will and not him to the will of his emotions and or the circumstances that are going on. He's not falling victim or subjecting himself to the human desires that we all suffer with. And this is a consistency, and structure will then produce this level of discipline that would have it to where I didn't resort to my old ways. When things happened to me, I didn't react to situations. I responded to them. When things were difficult, I didn't run from them or shut down. What I did was I embraced them, I learned from them, and I grew. And I used every moment as a learning tool to build me and to mold me and to lift me up higher. Motivation shows up when it wants to. Discipline shows up when it has to. Motivation is one of those things that it's just there. I wake up one day and I'm just fully motivated and I'm just ready to hit the world. And then I start doing the task and then it gets daunting and then I get tired. And then I'm like, man, I really just want to watch TV, or man, I really just want to do so. Or, man, I just really want to go to sleep. Well, the motivation is gone, but the discipline is going to show up. And not only that, but it's going to produce the outcome, the desired outcome that I am looking for. I got a question for you. Why do people stay inconsistent? Why is it that they quit when it gets uncomfortable? Because if they really think about it, growth feels unfamiliar because it's something that you're not used to. So if you're around people who are challenging you, if you are around people who are questioning the things that you are doing, not to criticize you, meaning that, hey, you know what, man, I'm going to point out what you're doing wrong, but then I'm also going to give you a couple of solutions of how you can get it right next time. Or I'm going to talk to you to help you come up with a better solution to figure out how not to make that mistake again. Positive criticism. Okay. Now, if I'm always just coming and just pointing out your negative behaviors and just leaving it at that, then that's just criticism, period. That's just negative criticism all day long. So if growth is unfamiliar, and if I'm growing and I put myself in unfamiliar places and then I only go to what feels normal, where can growth happen? We sit around and we have a society of people right now that's like, man, hey, I want this and I want that. And I'm like, okay, well, cool. Go put in the work for it. Go work for it. Go learn how to do it. Man, hey, look, you know what, man? I'm going to point you to this site. I'm going to point you to this book. I'm going to point you to this resource. And if you go and study it, you're going to learn what you need to learn, at least enough, or the basics, to be able to get the ball rolling. And it will help you then create a level of critical thinking to where you can break it down and you can build off of it. You can continue to build off of the thing that you are set on a path to do. Now, in scripture, in Romans 12:2, it says, do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. Now, again, this is the Hood to Holy podcast, right? So, man, everything that I do, I stand for Jesus Christ, man. Everything that I live and breathe Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is the Lord of my life. But when I'm reading this verse and it's saying that you will be transformed by the renewing of your mind, what it's saying is something is only going to change when I change my thinking. But when I change my thinking, I also got to establish some kind of structure and consistency to be able to form that level of discipline that is needed for me to respond and not react based off of emotions. Because again, earlier when we was reading, it was saying that our heart is deceitful and it's a liar. My emotions do not always tell me the truth. And so I cannot always act off of my emotions because of how I'm feeling. Because discipline brings trust. Consistency builds relationships. Structure feels restrictive. Structure actually creates productivity and clarity. People don't understand. Man, if I have a level of structure, I can have a level of clarity. If everything is always in chaos and I'm always putting everything off because I only want to focus on my feelings, and what I feel right now is that I want to relax, I want to chill, I want to do this, I want to do everything and anything that doesn't look productive or doesn't look like handling responsibilities pretty much. And in doing that, all my responsibilities get put off to the side, and then I'm rushing to solve the problem, and then everything is late, and then all of a sudden I'm like, man, hey, nobody wants to help me, nobody's ever doing this, or nobody's ever there, there's never no resources, there's always this and always that. No, man, the problem is that, man, you don't have no structure, you don't have no discipline, there's no consistency in your life. 1 Corinthians 14:40, it says, but everything should be done in a fitting and orderly way. Everything should be done in a fitting and orderly way. People choose comfort over growth. Comfort now versus growth later. Staying comfortable delays purpose. So if I'm always staying comfortable, I'm not growing. Growth doesn't happen in comfortability. Growth happens in uncomfortable, unfamiliar situations. If you have been trained by discipline, it will reap a harvest of righteousness and peace. Discipline cannot create chaos. Structure and consistency cannot produce chaos. It can only produce productivity. It can only produce positivity. It can only produce peace. It can only produce purpose. Structure and accountability can only produce growth. That's it. Chaos is not one of the things that it will produce. A person does not lack potential. You lack consistency. The potential is there. The consistency is not. And that's something that you need to think about. So you got to understand, growing up in chaos is like creating reactive behaviors. I was just talking to the young men that I was living with right now, man. And I remember when I was a kid living in California. And my stepdad, he was a part of the gang and everything. And one thing that I remember so vividly was one day I was sitting outside playing Pogs. If you're older, part of the older generation, you will know what I'm talking about. So I'm out there playing Pogs and I got my slammer and I'm hitting it. I look up. I'm thinking I'm about like maybe 5, 6 years old. I look up, I see the SWAT coming. I'm a little ways away from my front door. I see them go inside the house to take my stepdad. Then I also remember another time we're on the basketball court. My stepdad is out there playing basketball. Then all of a sudden I'm playing with my little ball, whatever. I'm just doing my thing. And I just hear some shots. Of course, I didn't know what it was when I was younger, but I hear gunshots. And what I remember is that my mom picks me up, runs me to the car. My grandma's there. My dad is getting in the car and he's limping, and all I hear is him yelling, "I'm shot, I'm shot." He got shot from the top of his, like right on the top of his knee, not his knee itself, and then it came out the other end at the bottom of the knee, on the bottom of the leg. Right. Well, I also remember moving around constantly because, my dad was always getting raided, going in and out of jail. And then my mom, she was addicted to crack cocaine. So we're never staying in any spot long enough to be able to get accommodated to the system. So I got used to always being the new kid that was moving from one place to the next. In this, right, I'm also a young kid and, I'm getting raised up in the 90s. And so gangs are there and gangs are around. And I was walking home one day from school when I was in elementary. This group of kids came up to me and they was wearing all red. This was when I had my first encounter with some gangs. They asked me if I wanted to join, and I told them no, because my mom, of course, I'm afraid of my mom, and she said that if I ever joined a gang, that I was gonna get my ass whooped. Right? And so when I told them no, they decided to jump me. I got beat up real bad. Well, my stepdad and his whole family, they're a part of the Crip game. So when I told him about it, all my young cousins, they found out. And so they went over there and jumped them other guys. And so next thing you know, I'm running with my cousins. This is how I was introduced to the gang life. It was in my family. It was in my presence all the time. I didn't really get affiliated or affirmed until later on in life. When I say growing up in chaos, what I mean is that there's never no steady, safe place any given time. And is more people out there that lived a life similar to mine, not probably as chaotic. And there's some that probably lived it more chaotic. But how do you go from chaotic lifestyle, being raised in this environment, being raised around all of this stuff, to being structured? And, by the age of 8, My mom ended up kicking me out. She's really heavily addicted. This is the peak of her addiction. Nothing on my mom. I love my mother with all my heart, and she's been clean and sober for a long time. But during this part of my story, she was at the peak of her addiction. And I ended up getting kicked out. And, there was a brief moment where I was a young 9-year-old on my own, just roaming around doing whatever I wanted to do, however I wanted to do it, not by choice, but by force. By the time I was 13, I was placed in foster care. And this was when my grandma put me in foster care. She called CPS. And then 3 months later, she let my brother come live with her. That's a whole nother story within itself. But what I'm saying is that the chaos that I was living in and the way I was raised and the people that raised me did not prepare me for a structured, disciplined life. And in that, what happened was it created this person that then continued living in that chaos and created chaos everywhere I went. So when I had my son and he was born, of course, I wasn't living a structured, put together life. I was living a chaotic life. I was in the streets. I was gangbanging. I was selling drugs. I was doing everything that I was taught to do growing up, thinking that this was the only thing that I could do because that was the only thing I was given and shown. Well, being in foster care was probably the only stable portion of my life. And I didn't really start figuring it out until I went to prison. And I've been to prison 4 times, did a total of 10 years. And by the time I went in the fourth time, I finally hey, you know what? Something has to change. Something needs to change. I told myself, man, I didn't want to be here 50, 60 years old, stuck in the penitentiary behind some stuff that I did out of emotion, right? Or being a victim mindset. So I needed to change something about me. So while I was in prison, I started structuring and disciplining my life, and I would show up to work. I would go and do what I needed to do. And inmates would ask me, Sean, why are you working so hard for these guards? They're not going to give you nothing. You're not going to get nothing from it. So why are you working so hard for these guards? And I said, man, I'm not doing it for them. I'm doing it to establish a habit within myself. So when I get out, I'm not going to be subject or subjected to doing the things that I was once doing when I was in the world. And so something had to change. And what that was structure, consistency, that then formed a piece of discipline that transitioned my life once I got out for the last time in 2017. And so I say all of that because the transformation process for me did not start until I made a mental decision that something needed to change. When I made that mental decision to change, I had to then work on my emotions. Because when I was in prison, of course, I'm dealing with a whole bunch of emotion because now I'm sober. Now I don't have a lot of distractions. It's just me, the cell, and all of these rowdy inmates around me. And so I'm having to deal with my emotions, but I'm also having to deal with surviving in this chaotic place. So I started teaching myself how to read and write. I started going to school. I started doing everything that was opposite of what everybody else was doing around me on the unit. And what I ended up finding out is by me doing that, I was establishing something that was going to carry me on for the rest of my life. So in 1 Corinthians 14:33, for God is not a God of disorder, but of peace, as in all the congregations of the Lord's people. And so as I'm in prison and I'm thinking about it, I'm like, I've been living a chaotic life since I was born. I was born into a chaotic environment. I was born into people who were damaged and, been through some things in their own life that caused them to also live a chaotic life. And then it transitioned down to me, which we'll get into in the next episode, which is cycles. It says that he is not a God of disorder, but of peace. And so when Christ came into my life, I'm like, so this is what peace feels like, even though it's still chaotic in my life. When I was at the homeless shelter, 19, I'm in a homeless shelter. It's chaos around me. But when I found Christ and I allowed Christ to come into my life, what I realized was, snap, this is what peace looks like. In Ecclesiastes 3:1, there is a time for everything, a season for every activity under heaven. There is a time and a season for everything. And the thing is that yes, I grew up in chaos. I grew up in this lifestyle, in this environment. But what that did, all it did was strengthen me to be a better man later on if I was able to learn from my mistakes and the things that I went through when I was younger. If I'm able to learn from that, I'm able to grow and I'm able to build something that is greater than my own understanding, and realizing that while I was in prison, I'm building this structure. I'm being consistent, going to work. I'm learning, I'm reading, and I'm elevating myself. I'm always in the library. I'm always reading something new. I've read over 500 books, and it's been on business, mental health, self-help, and or psychiatric disorders for me to understand who I was, because they diagnosed me with everything. I didn't understand what I was diagnosed with and why they was diagnosing me. But in these books, it helped me understand me and the things that was happening inside of my mind that was causing me to act in these ways, have depression, have bipolar, have schizophrenia, all this stuff that was coming up. I didn't understand why it was, but then I started reading and educating myself. And in building this structure, what I realized is it set me free from chaos. Structure didn't trap me. It saved me. What had me trapped and bondaged was the chaos that I grew up in and the chaos that I was living. So when we're talking about all of this, right? We've been talking about discipline, we've been talking about structure, we've been talking about routines. One thing I want to talk about is, how do you practically build discipline in your life? Practically. And this is the way that I did it, but it's a way that is proven over time, because when you're trying to build habits into your life, what you're doing is you're reprogramming the brain, you're reprogramming yourself to do something different than what you've been doing. Do what you said you was going to do, even when you don't feel like it. Again, we're not talking about feelings. We're not talking about motivation. We're talking about discipline, the thing that keeps you grounded, the thing that is going to keep you going towards that goal or that objective that you are aiming towards. But start small. Do something small, but stay consistent in it. Whether it's waking up at a certain time and then just having a morning routine after you wake up. If you stay consistent at it, it builds a level of discipline. So then when new endeavors come upon you, you're able to then establish the discipline that you've been building into that new thing. Build routines so you don't rely on feelings. Man, I heard people complain all the time while I was in prison. I'm not going to sit here and complain about it, man. What I'm going to do is I'm going to build myself up every day to make sure that I never come back to this place. I used to escape in books. I would read books to escape the reality that I was in, but I wasn't just reading any book. I was reading books that was going to strengthen my mind. I was surrounding myself with men in prison who was also working towards building of characteristics that was going to prevent them from coming back into the penitentiary system. Those are the people that I decided to hang around with. Those are the people that I decided to chill with and talk it with when I was in prison. We'll grow, we'll build, but it was always a building process. I looked at it as I was in a dorm and I was in college and I was trying to learn and grow and build. So when I got out, I would never come back. So I didn't see myself as being in prison. I saw myself as being in college because I was in college. But I just saw it as, hey, you know what, man, I'm on campus. And yeah, sure, I got to follow these rules and I got to go through this stuff, but I had to build structure and I had to do it slowly by doing a routine, and consistently builds trust and reliability within myself because I was reliable. I was able to work different jobs. I was able to put in requests to go to another job and I was able to move. And I didn't do nothing under the table simply because I wanted to get away from that thinking. I wanted to get away from the scamming and the scheming and the plotting and the lying and all that stuff. I wanted to get away from that because that's what I've been doing all my life. And then, so in doing that, I then moved from chaos to a structured living while I was in prison. Now, when I got out, it was a different story because I had to apply the stuff that I was learning. This is where I came up with the phrase that knowledge is not power. Knowledge is a source of power, but it is not power. The application of the knowledge that you have is true power. And I realized that when I got out and I had all this knowledge, I read all these books, I had this great plan set out for me. And when I got out, everything was just chaotic. Everything was just up in chaos. Why? Because I didn't account for all the variables and the factors of real life and all of the different things that I was going to have to deal with. And I didn't account for the emotional turmoil that I was going to have to go through to battle. The emotional things that I had to go through when I first got out was the thing. What I didn't realize is that, man, I was trying to survive and I was trying to keep up with everybody. But the emotional turmoil that came to me when I was going through all of this, I couldn't see my kids when I got out. I didn't have access to my family. I didn't have nobody there. I didn't have no real moral support around me. I didn't have no systems built around me to help me. And so in that, I started going back to this victim mindset that then led to me reacting off of my emotions instead of being disciplined and structured like I had when I was in prison. But what I did find was when I did go back to trying to sell dope was that it felt uncomfortable because I've been working this whole time when I was in prison. And so when I got out and I was working a job, it felt really good. And then when I lost the job and I lost these opportunities and I'm stuck out on the streets and I didn't know what to do, of course, some of my homies, they called me like, hey, Sean, man, man, we got this and we got that, da, da, da. And I'm like, hey, I hear you, fam, but I don't want to do that. And then it got to a desperate time where I called them and like, hey, I'm ready to do that. But when I was doing it, I'm like, this doesn't feel right. I just don't feel the same as I once did when I was out here. And it was because I knew something different. I was educated, man. I was built different. I was a different person. So I'm like, man, look, I just need to get a job. And then the hustler came out, right? And so then I started doing moving, and then I started doing roofing, and then I started doing remodeling. And then next thing you know, I'm doing self-contracting and I'm moving up, but I also picked up this addiction. And so the discipline and the structure didn't come until later on, until I was in the shelter in 2019, because I got out in 2017. And in 2019 was when the structure and the discipline replaced and came back in. I was still being disciplined, but I wasn't being disciplined in the right ways. I was still acting out of my emotions until I got rid of the fact that, man, hey, look, man, my emotions are lying to me. My emotions are deceiving me. My emotions are keeping me trapped and stuck. I need to get over this and I need to move forward and I need to do it now. If not, I'm going to lose my life. And so, you have to build this level of structure in order to get out of chaos and to be set free. And Christ tells us this all the time throughout the whole Bible. He always tells us about how he's going to set us free, how we have to be renewed by the renewing of our mind, that we cannot believe our heart because it's deceitful. Okay. In Luke 16:10, whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. And whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much. When I came to San Antonio and I'm living in a homeless shelter, somebody gave me a key to the office space. And I'm like, whoa, that's crazy. Why would you give me a key to your office space, fam? You don't even know me. And what I learned was that, man, if people can trust me with their keys, if they can trust me with their personal things and their personal belongings, and I take care of it as if it's mine, then they're going to continue to trust me. But not only that, not them, but God. God is going to trust me with more than what I can ever imagine because he is in my life. He is the savior of my life. He provides everything for me. And then also Proverbs 21:5 says, the plans of the diligent lead to profit. Surely as haste leads to poverty, meaning that if I'm always in a rush and I'm always moving and I'm just moving just to be moving, it's going to lead to poverty. But if I am diligent with what I have and I'm structured and I have consistency and I have discipline, guess what? It's going to prosper. Things are going to benefit and it's going to enhance, right? Discipline is built in moments nobody sees. Nobody is looking. That's where discipline is born. When I was in the penitentiary and I was building that discipline that then transformed my life, yes, it took me a minute to transition back in, but it didn't take that long because I accomplished all of my goals that I had written out while I was in prison. It was a 3-year plan and I accomplished it in a year and a half. Every single thing that was on that list. And then I got complacent because I didn't know what to do after that. I learned a valuable lesson about making sure that I know where I'm going and it's not just a one and done, because you can set goals and plans and then achieve them way faster than what you are expecting. And you will get complacent and lost. And even in my life now, right, I had to learn that lesson again. And I have to keep going back to the drawing board, but it's what you do in moments where nobody sees that is building the character that is going to carry you through to the next phase of your life. Discipline creates freedom. Discipline removes chaos. Structure creates clarity. Consistency builds confidence. Freedom comes after responsibility is handled. I got out, man, and I'm dealing with all of this stuff, and I don't have a place. I don't have a car. I don't have a roof over my head. I don't have steady income. I don't have nothing. And so I have to manage my responsibilities, and I got to build into that thing. And so I finally got me a truck. I still didn't have a place. I still didn't have a consistent job, but I got me a truck. And then that truck allowed me to get other jobs to be able to pay for it and to be able to help me elevate my life one thing at a time. Learning to prioritize responsibilities over comfort, learning how to prioritize anything, putting first things first. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, man, I read that book several times when I was in prison and I teach it today. But putting first things first is one of the responsibility and one of the key habits that you have to have in order to truly grow into whatever it is that you're trying to go. And then with structure and discipline, you can start experiencing real peace after structure. Discipline you avoid today is the freedom you delay tomorrow. Meaning responsibilities you don't take care of today by prioritizing the things that need to be prioritized tomorrow. You do not have the luxury of being having free or being freedom or being able to enjoy yourself and having that level of freedom that you truly desire. Right? If I want to go on a vacation, if I'm not handling my responsibilities, I'm not going on vacation. I can't even afford it. If I'm not handling my responsibilities and everything is not in order, then how do I expect to be able to move forward in life and grow and be able to have vacations and go on cruises and go on these different places if I'm not handling my responsibilities properly? People know what they need to do. They just don't feel like doing it. Plain and simple. People allow for their emotions to lead their life, and they're never taking responsibility for the things that they're doing. It's always somebody else's fault or something else's fault, but they never take the real time to own up to their part of it, learn from it, grow from it, and then allow for that change of that discipline and that structure to then ultimately change the course of their life. James 1:22 says, "Do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says." Don't just read the Bible just to be reading it. Don't just be preaching the Bible just to be preaching it. Live what you're preaching. Practice what you speak, right? Do the things that you know you're supposed to do. What is your moral code? What is the thing that is holding you and grounding you? Are you going to keep obeying your feelings or start leading your life? Are you going to take ownership? Are you going to take lead of your life? Or is your emotion and everything around you going to be the thing that continues to control you? All right, everybody, man. See you on the next episode of Hood to Holy podcast, where we are going to be talking about breaking cycles and generational patterns. Man, if you got something from this message, man, like and comment, right? Follow, share, let the people know, man, what we are doing here, man. We are having real conversations, talking about real truths where real change can happen. We're not talking about fluff. And the only thing that I can come from is my own story. And so if you are listening to this podcast all the way through and you are here at this moment, man, I just appreciate you, man. Like and share and hit that follow button, man. Y'all peace out, bro.